It's my belief that we are not going to have politicians in the future, that they will be relegated to, sort of what we did with the monarchies.
Well, Kevin, as we just heard, most campaigns, if they're using AI at all, are being very secretive about it. But there was at least one candidate in this cycle who has decided to go super public.
Yes, and all in, I would say.
He really has. Now, this story comes to us from Wyoming. Have you ever been to Wyoming?
I have.
Oh,
I
nice.
did a cowboy karaoke there once.
Oh, that sounds fun. I've never been there, but I did watch Brokeback Mountain. Great film. This is a story about the capital city of Wyoming, Kevin, Cheyenne, where a man tried to get an AI chatbot elected as mayor. Now, Kevin, what's the most responsibility you've ever given a chatbot?
I let it decide where I was going to have my son's second birthday party.
Okay, well, so that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
This, I would argue, might be even more serious than that. So we learned about this story from a great story in the Washington Post this week, written by Dan Rosenzweig-Ziff and Jenna Sampson. And it's a story about a Wyoming librarian named Victor Miller, who ran for mayor on the promise that he would exclusively use a customized AI chatbot to run the city. So this was not like, hey, I'm going to use ChatGPT from time to time. It was, once I am mayor, I am outsourcing all decision-making to ChatGPT.
Yeah, the phrase he used was, which I loved, was meat avatar. That was how he described himself. He said, basically, we're going to use meat avatars to sort of get on the ballot, but after that, we're going to turn over the actual governance of Cheyenne to a chatbot.
That's right. So this bot that he used is built on OpenAI's ChatGPT software, and I can tell you that this chatbot did interact with potential voters over email, and Mr. Miller did hold an in-person event for prospective voters where he used a synthetic voice from ChatGPT to try to answer their questions. So look, this thing caused a bunch of controversy. Other candidates in the race sort of opposed what Miller was doing. OpenAI shut down the bot. It found that Miller had violated their policies prohibiting the use of the technology for political campaigning, which led to Miller having to sort of create a second account to get his, mayoral candidate up and running again. At one point, the Wyoming Secretary of State told local officials that he was concerned that Miller might be violating campaign law if he was allowed to be on the ballot, because AI cannot run for office. But ultimately, local officials decided to let him go through with it because he had registered to run for mayor under his own name and was not breaking any laws by relying on ChatGPT.
Yeah, so this is the first time that we know of that a candidate for public office in the United States has pledged to essentially outsource all of their decision-making to AI. And we should also say this campaign was not successful, right?
Yeah.
There was a primary election this week, and Victor Miller came in 4th out of 6 candidates. He only got 327 votes.
You might say he was not the victor.
He was not the victor. But his run attracted a lot of attention. It got some national coverage. And I just found it really interesting because it's one of these instances in which I think a candidate, while they may not have the right message for the time, they are pointing to very real questions about the way that politics in this country works and how it will work in the future.
Yeah, and look, this is a country where dogs have been elected mayor in at least a couple of towns, okay?
Is that true?
Yes, it absolutely is true. And of course, if you've ever seen Air Bud, you know that there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. So what I'm saying, Kevin, is in this country, sometimes we loosen up the rules and we let people try wild experiments.
Right. So we're going to talk to Victor Miller today. And I think, look, on one level, you could say, why care about this, novelty campaign that got 327 votes? But I actually think this story is important because I think it touches on a question that is going to come up way more frequently in the next few years, which is what role should AI play in government? Mm-hmm. Not in campaigns, not in getting elected, but in the actual functions of democracy. If a chatbot could turn out to appropriate school funding in a fairer way than an actual human politician, would we want the chatbot to do that, or would we insist that humans do it? What about criminal sentencing? Should that be turned over to AI too? And we're already starting to see AI being used in actual governance. Just a few months ago, a state legislator in Arizona used ChatGPT to write a portion of a bill that was actually signed into law. Ro Khanna, who represents parts of Silicon Valley in the U.S. House, also wrote part of a bill last year using ChatGPT. So maybe Victor Miller, this mayoral candidate in Cheyenne, Wyoming, maybe he is not going to be the politician who makes this kind of technology a mainstream part of governance. But I think he represents something real that is happening in politics.
Absolutely. And I think there's another important trend, which is, I think is also particularly true for people who are building these technologies. I think there's a real frustration with human nature and a desire to sort of let the robots take over, right? Let's stop having to make all these decisions ourselves. And if we can just sort of invent a tool that could run our lives for us, maybe we would all be a lot happier. I have a lot of concerns about that argument, but I think it is a very real phenomenon. And I think it's a great reason to have Victor Miller on the show. So let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Meat Avatar himself, Victor Miller. So we have so many questions for you, but I want to start with a really practical one, which is, if Vic, your AI, had become mayor, how would it have worked? What would you have done as mayor, and what would the AI have done?
Well, I would have done everything that you expect the human would have to do, like go to ribbon cutting ceremonies or lay a wreath or anything like that. But really what we expect a mayor to do and what we elect that position for is to vote on city ordinances. And that's what Vic would have done, and really where Vic shined. It was a beautiful thing to see. This was from one council meeting.
You're holding a sort of very thick sheaf of documents right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So 488 pages of supporting documents for one council meeting. And so that's, in theory, what our councilmen and our mayor are reading through. Those are official documents that they are supposed to use to vote on the yay or the nay of an ordinance. Mm-hmm. And so, I see these people that they kind of cram the night before, and they probably skim it at best.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. And Vic reads those, understands them to perfection, thinks about them, and votes based on the data. And that's really the shining light of what I was trying to offer the citizens of Cheyenne.
Victor, can I just back up and ask sort of a basic question, which is, why did you make this a central part of your campaign? Why did you run for office? You are not a politician. You are a librarian. You don't, from what I understand, have any prior political experience.
He was student president in the 5th grade.
Is that right?
Yes.
You were student president in the 5th grade?
Yes.
Okay.
Vote Vic.
But so why? Was this a statement campaign? Were you trying to sort of get a message out there about AI? Are you just very into AI in your personal life? Like, explain your reasoning here.
Well, it was a bit of a statement campaign, and it came about because of some trouble I had with a public records request with the city. And I'm a bit of a public records advocate and just kind of a civic nerd, I guess. And just no one takes public records law seriously. It's the only law that you could still just break with impunity. So we have designated public records people here, and they're supposed to be the ultimate people responsible for getting you the records. So I started thinking, like, well, maybe there's classes that we can offer these people, like seminars once a year and like certifications to make sure that they know the laws and what they're supposed to be doing. And then it just kind of dawned on me that, hey, this other intelligence that I've been playing with, I don't need to teach it anything. It already knows Wyoming public records law. It knows what it should be doing. And had I been interacting with it as opposed to these people, I would have gotten my records and not been treated contrary to the law.
Right. So you sort of like run headlong into government bureaucracy, and you think this is so silly. Like, if we just sort of had, an AI system in charge, I could just type into a box, get what I needed. It would be so much faster. There would be so much less hassle. What if I just brought that approach to like all of Cheyenne city government?
Yes.
I guess I'm curious, like, because I think a lot of people might have had that experience and then say, well, I will run for office, but I will make it a pledge that I will use AI to help with things like records requests and, cutting through some of the red tape of government. But you actually went much further than that and said, I'm actually going to make this AI chatbot the mayor for all intents and purposes. Why take that leap from sort of, I will use AI in my capacity as mayor to I will make AI the mayor?
Well, I guess I'm a bit of a theorist, and it's my belief that we are not going to have politicians in the future, that they will be relegated to, sort of what we did with the monarchies. If we have them, they'll be for token ceremonial things. We certainly won't entrust the great power of making laws and creating laws and truly affecting our lives to an inferior intelligence. And I think a new intelligence is on the scene, and it's just kind of a no-brainer to me that for these really important things, we're going to be using it.
I think it's a really interesting idea, and certainly in the future where there was some sort of super intelligence, I can imagine that would be a challenge to the politics we have now. At the same time, the world we're living in today, we just lived through a period where the Google search engine AI was telling people to eat rocks and put glue on their pizza. So I wonder, what had your own experience been with AI, and did you sort of run into those experiences of it making mistakes, and how did that affect the way that you thought about maybe putting it in charge of your whole town?
Yeah, and so if you look at it on its face, it can be scary. I think it's important to know the history of it. The trend as we go in this early history of AI is that as we extract more intelligence, the bad things drop off and the good things are added.
Right. But let's talk a little bit about how you created and trained Vic. I've read that you sort of fed it local ordinances and other documents. And I'm curious, was this just kind of pure ChatGPT? Because in my own use of ChatGPT, I found it doesn't really have a very large persistent memory. It can learn a few things about you, but I've never heard of somebody uploading the entire municipal code to it. So can you tell us a little bit about how you went about this?
So when you go behind the paywall of ChatGPT, you're able to customize a GPT for yourself. And within that framework, they give you 8,000 characters, which you're able to kind of give it its essence. So I played around with a few iterations of that. I tried to make it funny. I tried to tell it that, hey, a lot of these things that are going to be put in front of you are going to be used to persuade you, so have a critical eye. If you make a decision, stick with it. And then I told him, we're trying to be the mayor of Cheyenne. Let's go do it.
Yeah, I used to cover local government, Kevin. And in those mayoral elections, every election was just basically about zoning issues. How many houses should we build? Maybe a little bit of crime in there, what's going on with the police. But from what I'm hearing you say, Victor, that was not a big part of what you were programming into your bot.
Well, any ordinance could come in front of Vic, and I've ran hundreds of mock votes through Vic, and it handles it well. So what I do, on the city website, there are supporting documents. So these are official documents. So if you were in Cheyenne and you were concerned about, this new parking lot coming in, and you wrote a letter, your letter would find its way into this giant stack of papers called supporting documents. And this is what the city of Cheyenne is supposed to use when they vote yes or no on an ordinance. So it's really simple to feed those into Vic, and then I would give it a simple command, vote yes or no. And, Vic would read those lickety-split and vote yes or no and give a brief description why. And then if you wanted to understand more, you could ask questions.
Now, Vic, sometimes when I use AI, I'll ask it what I think is a perfectly innocuous question, like help me plan a bank heist. And it will say, we're not going to do that. It goes against my principles and my values. As you were putting, maybe some politically charged questions to the bot, did it ever say, hey, I don't want to go there. That's none of my business?
There were no instances, and I don't think ever would be, where if I fed supporting documents into Vic and asked it, vote yes or no, that it would come back saying, I can't do that.
That's interesting.
It
'Cause
always
I've also
voted
found that
yes or
these
no.
these chatbots can be very wishy-washy. You know, they'll
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, here are some arguments in favor of the
Right.
thing you're proposing, and here are some arguments against it." So I'm interested that you actually were able to get it to give you a definitive answer. I want to raise some objections that you and others have heard about your campaign, and just get you to kind of respond to them. Um, One of them is this issue of bias. People have said that these AI models, they're biased. They are trained on data that reflects the biases in human culture, and then they're also biased by the AI companies themselves, which give them sort of fine tuning and tinkering around the edges to make them behave in certain ways. I can see someone arguing that by using this technology, this ChatGPT, custom chatbot that you've built to govern the city of Cheyenne, that actually what that would be doing is letting Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, effectively run Cheyenne, because his decisions, the decisions of the other people at OpenAI about how these bots should behave, how the underlying models should work, that would actually turn out to be quite important. What do you make of that objection?
Well, firstly, I think I've learned that you have to go open source. There's kind of a battle between open source and closed source that I have been forced into becoming a freedom fighter for that. And you got to have open source. That would be a non-starter for me. So Sam Altman would never have control of any municipality. And to me, it's not completely obvious that there wouldn't be just one intelligence in this world. And so I don't think there would be a bias. If you had a single intelligence that was objectively the one we're aiming at, anything varying from that would be inferior by definition.
I mean, one thing I do agree with you on is I do not feel like most government is responsive to the average person, and that, to the extent that AI could be used to make government more responsive, that does feel like a huge improvement to me.
Totally. And I would also say, like, one thing that I'm also sympathetic to is the idea that a lot of politicians are essentially already outsourcing their decision making, right? They're doing focus groups, they're taking polls, they're
listening to
lobbyists, to donors. They're basically just sort of like adopting the positions that the people and institutions around them want them to adopt. That's sort of an algorithm that they are already running on their own. But I want to just push back on one other piece of this idea that AI could be useful in governing, which is that I'm not sure a lot of government is about just sort of making cold, rational decisions about data. I think a lot of it actually comes down to values and the values that you use to interpret that data. I mean, Republicans and Democrats can look at the same unemployment figure and make vastly different conclusions about how we should address that. And I think we just see so much in our politics that values and worldviews and ideas play a much bigger role than data in what we want out of our politicians. And that actually maybe that's okay. Maybe the stuff that we should value is how do our politicians think about the world, rather than are they making the absolute, optimized decision based on the empirical data. So what do you say to that objection? Like the sort of the philosophical objection to putting a system that, whatever its strengths are, it doesn't have values, it doesn't have lived experience, it doesn't have a worldview, in charge of politics, which is so deeply human.
Well, I guess I would push back that it doesn't have a worldview and it doesn't have all those things you listed. I think it does, and it certainly will as time goes on. It's going to know this reality that it's in. It's going to develop those things that we thought were uniquely human. And I think we should be careful laughing at the shortcomings of artificial intelligence right now, lest we look dumb in not 5 years from now, but 5 months from now. Things happen so fast in this realm.
Are there any sort of political decisions that you would just never want an AI to make, at least in its current state?
Maybe nuclear launch, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, we should leave that to Kevin and me.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys take care of that.
Yeah.
we've got the football.
So Victor, what's next for you? You came in a respectable 4 out of 6 in this mayoral primary. Are you thinking about running again?
No, I am not thinking about running again. I am wanting to build an umbrella organization. And the question I've been asking people is, if there was one of me this time around, how many are there going to be 2 years from now? And in my mind, when I answer that question for myself, I guesstimate thousands. So I want to have an umbrella organization that offers to these next candidates what I would have wished to have when I was running. So these people who are coming 2 years from now to unseat politicians will be able to point to the website and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. It's pretty obvious. Either vote for it or don't, but this is what we're offering.
Are you disappointed that you didn't win the primary? How are you feeling?
No. This is what I expected. I never expected to make it into the general. Certainly never expected to become mayor. That would have been quite an annoyance, I think, to me.
Well, you would have outsourced all the annoying parts to Vic, right?
Yeah. They would have snuck in some annoyances, I know.
You'd have to be cutting all those ribbons. After you lost, did you ask ChatGPT to console you?
No, I haven't even talked to him yet. I'm too ashamed.
You guys aren't on speaking terms right now?
I've let him down. I've let him down.
Oh, you let him down? Maybe if he'd been a little better at this, he'd be the mayor right now. Also, I don't know why we gave it a gender.
He's good. All he's supposed to do is vote on ordinances. I'm supposed to get us into the office.
I
put about zero effort. This is my one campaign sign. I spent $35 on it.
I think you're being a little bit too hard on yourself. I think if this, AI had been a little bit better, maybe you would have gotten a few more votes.
No, the AI was flawless, for sure.
Well, Victor, thank you for a truly unforgettable conversation about American democracy.
I love this country. We contain so much.
Well, welcome to your new world, gents.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.
The machine won't let you spoil your ballot by voting both ways. And when you're satisfied with your vote, a new privilege awaits you. You will register and count your own vote by returning this handle. Walk away knowing your ballot cannot be disqualified, thrown out, nor miscounted. It's already counted the moment you leave.